How you doing?
Hey Khaled, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Did I just cut my head off over here? Let me tilt this
Oh, no
up.
worries. You got a full body shot today.
Yeah, I changed backdrops for you. There you go.
There we go. Awesome. Cool. A lot of questions. Busy day?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll keep it to half an hour
I,
then.
I
Okay.
did I did just listen to the premier's announcement and trying to understand what that 3.7 million will be, how it will serve people who can't otherwise get to a vaccination center. How will we get them there?
Yeah, I think they were a little confused at the details as well. So, cool. We'll get to the budget afterwards. But okay,
Sure.
so are we closer to the red zone or are we closer to the stay-at-home order in
All right.
Mississauga?
Well, as you know, I like to get I asked Dr. Lowe for the epidemiology report a little in advance because it always comes Tuesday and it used to come after our call. So now I have it come before our call or just
Thank
as
you very
we're
much.
right. So the new numbers hot off the press. And I know they do have a problem with the provincial reporting system. So the positivity numbers are not in, but I don't think they've changed too much. Obviously, all the numbers have gone up, and we know that they've gone up about 25%. And what
Yeah.
else we know is that the new variants account for 45% of all new cases. Right, so the original virus seems to have subsided, but now it's all the new variants. So the numbers are Mississauga, 97 cases per 100,000. So we're under 100, but just barely by the skin of our teeth. Caledon is at 132.9. Let's call it 133 cases per
Okay.
100,000. And Brampton, unfortunately, is at 173 cases per 100,000. So we're averaging at 128 in Peel, 128.
So correct me if I'm wrong. The number is 40, right, for red? 40 for 100,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we're not
And
get- we're
and then
not getting into red.
no, we're not getting into red. However, I do want to walk through the reproductive numbers in a second. But we had expected last week to not only open patios, right? We had expected outdoor activities, outdoor training. So for the gyms, for me to go back to F45 outside in the parking lot, I would have been fine with that. Outdoor activities, training, etc. And that didn't come. So we're wondering what happened. I know there's a lot of pressure on the government right now for personal care services, right? We don't all have daughters that can do hair, right?
Yeah.
So personal care services, right? There's a lot of pressure on them for that.
Okay.
And so we don't know, like that'll be a cabinet decision tomorrow. Of course, all the public health officers are reluctant and very, very cautious, as they should be, because their one goal is to protect our public health. But there is certainly a lot of pressure. And I think it's something people have been calling for and have been demanding. I mean, we've been in lockdown now more than 4 months. I mean, how long can, well, Khaled, you don't seem to have a lot of hair that you need to have. You probably do your barbering yourself, but there are
Yeah.
those of us who kind of need to take care of business, personal care services, right? It's been a while. It's been 4 or 5 months. And plus, not to mention, we haven't eaten in a restaurant in that long either. But the reproductive numbers, they're not great. The only one that went down significantly is Caledon. Last week, they're at 1.54, which is very
Okay.
high, right? More than 1.5 people will be infected for every one person that has COVID. And they're down to 0.99. So they're actually under one now, but barely. They're basically one. Brampton's 1.12 and Mississauga's 1.18. So we're still over one, and that is the telling number that the virus is spreading. It's continuing to spread through the community through community transmission, whether it's households or workplace. It's a combination of everything: community, households, and workplaces. And then we have the numbers of the virus. Still the predominant one is the UK variant, and again, predominantly in Brampton. There are 10 cases of the South African, and they're here in Mississauga, and 6 cases of the Brazilian, and they are here in Mississauga as well. So that is the latest epidemiology report, hot off the press. We did have the conversation with the hospitals yesterday. Trillium Health Partners is at 101% capacity.
Okay.
So
So,
not very good at all, not at all. And of course, they have, as always, about 50 people in the hospital with COVID. They didn't see the ICU numbers, but there's almost 100 that are suspected pending. William Osler was the same. They had 76 admits with COVID, 17 in the ICU, and another 100 that being suspected.
so
Vaccines in arms is about 107,000 is the number we pulled off of the dashboard, which is really, really helpful, the dashboard.
and that
107,000 vaccines in arms to date. So that includes everybody that we did in the long-term care homes, in the seniors' homes, the frontline healthcare workers, the essential workers, and now the over 80s. And as you know, we're over 75. And there are some regions that are moving to 70 and over. And I know Guelph is at 60 and over. So we're moving quickly. And we're moving quickly because number one, there is a lot of hesitancy. And number two, the vaccine is starting to arrive. This week we did get shipments. Right, so it's starting to come in. We can vaccinate many, many more people when we have the supply.
True. So let me ask you this then. I mean, is there a chance that we might get back into stay-at-home order because these numbers are kind of dreadful?
That's the rumor.
That is a rumor?
That is the rumor. But and I think it would be region-wide, it might even be province-wide, because certainly you see a number of regions that were in green or in yellow are now moved up to orange or red. So there are regions moving into the wrong direction, shall we say.
Yeah.
So it's something they're watching very, very closely, and
Okay.
it could happen. So, you know, the weather is nice and people want to be out, and those are good things. Because less transmissible outdoors, people generally tend to relax the rules a little bit too when they're outside and they're meeting their friends and going for a walk, or now there could be an outdoor patio. So people aren't as vigilant either, and they need to continue to be, or we could end up in, and you know, here in Peel, we've been in lockdown basically for over 4 months, and we've been in modified restrictions longer than that. So
Yeah, this, you know, when you tell me that, it's like it's like my heart sank a little bit, just because I mean, we, like you said, we have been in lockdown for 4 months, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. I know that some doctors have warned that if we don't lock down now, we could be in lockdown till, you know, fall.
right,
Right?
and that was the criticism at Christmas time, if you recall. We all said we'd been in lockdown in October. Maybe we could have been out of lockdown by the holidays and would not have gone through that, because basically it was what, December 26th to February 9th, I want to say, of those about right. About that 6-week period we were in lockdown. Had we done that sooner, right, maybe
Yeah.
we wouldn't have closed over the holidays. So if we stay locked down sooner now, maybe better in the summer. Don't know. I mean, the thought of it, is feeling oppressing to me, because we were so close to red zone, what, 3 weeks ago.
And looking at red zone now with, like, I think you're allowed 50 people inside restaurants and stuff. I don't.
50% or 50 people, whichever is
Okay.
lower. 50. They changed the numbers because
Yeah, and then you saw what happened in Oakville.
yes. So
Yeah.
it was 10 people in red. And then they realized that's really not fair, because there are many large capacity restaurants. And I always raise La Castile, of course, because they can accommodate 500 people. So had we been in red zone, it makes no sense for them to open with 10 people. You know, it takes more than 10 people to get that restaurant open. So it didn't make any sense for them. They could safely accommodate 50% of their capacities. And this is a motion that the Ontario Big City Mayors passed, that we have used capacity limits in retail and in grocery stores and in big box stores. Why not apply the same formula to, you know, every other sector that you open, whether it's places of religious worship or it's restaurants or personal care? Just use the same formula, whether it's 25%, 50%, et cetera, because that's something we all understand. 50% of your floor capacity, 25% of your floor capacity, what's safe for people, rather than a number which feels kind of arbitrary, right? 10 people. 10 people
Yeah.
always felt arbitrary. We always asked, where did that number come from? Who decided it would be 10? Why was it decided it would be 10? It's fine if you're a small cafe, that might be your capacity, but if you're a large restaurant, that you know, didn't seem equitable and fair. So I think the using percentage capacity makes a lot more sense. But, you know, we're not anywhere near there right now, given the changes. And these are the variants. So we just want to caution people that they're much more transmissible than the original. You know, we used to say that it would take about 15 minutes for this virus to cross over, and that's why you were much safer in the grocery store, crossing people in the aisles and sitting down at dinner at a restaurant. But these, you know, from the experience we had at the condo in downtown Mississauga, these were people who didn't know each other, who crossed paths in the common areas, or maybe rode the elevator together. That's how transmissible the new viruses are, new variants rather are.
So let's talk the other subject, vaccines. Okay, we heard yesterday that Peel is going to start getting the vaccination pilot program in pharmacies. Have you heard?
Well, we actually didn't hear that, not officially. Not officially. Like, I have no official channels telling me that we're getting vaccine for pharmacies and what pharmacies those would be. We don't have any information on that other than when more vaccine comes, of course, we'll expand the pilot and of course you'll participate, right? I'm still a little hot under the collar that it was given to Kingston because they're in green rather than the inferno, as the premier called us, in you know, in gray zone over here in Peel. So, you know, I don't know, again, who made that decision and why. Why was Windsor, Toronto, and Kingston chosen for the pharmacy pilot? And why were, you know, the 8 regions, including Miss Peel, chosen for the primary care provider? But in Toronto was chosen for both. You would have thought Peel would have been chosen for both. We're the gray zone, we're the hotspot, we're the inferno. So I don't know why that decision was made. And we've been hearing that when they expand the program, we'll participate. But I have no announcement, nothing concrete that's going to happen, what the timing of that would be, and which pharmacies would participate. I know that they had a large number of agreements for all the pharmacies that participated in the 3 regions where they opened up the pilot initially, including Toronto, and the legal agreements were quite comprehensive. And I've heard no one pharmacist has called me to say you should see the size of this agreement. So no, there has been nothing yet. Nothing yet. But it absolutely makes sense. And what also makes sense is to expand it to primary care providers. People feel safer going to their doctor's office, to the person that gives them primary care, that gives them their health care, somebody they trust and they know to give them their vaccine. Let's expand that program. It's very cold and sterile and institutional to go into those mass vaccination sites. Of course, they're very efficient, but the uptake on them isn't huge right now. I think people would feel safer and more confident to go into either their local pharmacy or to go see their doctor to get their vaccine.
True. So my mom got her vaccine done.
Oh, that's fantastic. Where'd she?
So she lives in Scarborough, right?
Okay.
But they are rolling it out. Her next shot is not until July 5th.
Yeah, for 4 months.
Crazy.
4 months.
So I mean,
when Hazel was asked when she joined my press conference, she misspoke because then they had changed the rules, and so she said April 9th, but in fact she's been pushed out as well because now you can wait 4 months. You can wait.
I guess, do you know, I was listening to a doctor and they said that that would make sense for most people, like you and I, right? But it wouldn't make sense for people that are over, kind of 75 and up, right? Maybe.
So let's not forget that the vaccination gives them, 75, 80% protection on the first dosage, and that gets topped up with the, let's call it the booster, the second round. So, they do have a good amount of protection with the first one, or NACI or whatever, who's making the decisions, Public Health Canada wouldn't have made that call to say it was safe to delay it for 4 months. And, often, it's about the time you get a booster shot,
True. So AstraZeneca, a lot of controversy in regards to that vaccine. More controversy in the States saying that the data was old and stuff like that. I guess, let me ask you, would you get the AstraZeneca shot if it was your turn, when it's your time on TV?
Sure, because the best vaccine is the next vaccine,
Yeah.
correct? Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I don't have an issue with the safety of the AstraZeneca vaccine, and I think that those issues have been disputed and explained with respect to the blood clotting. And let's also keep in mind that we didn't. Those factories, those facilities, did not
Yeah.
produce the AstraZeneca vaccine, which we received here in Canada. We got ours from the state-of-the-art plant in India. It's
Okay.
one of the most modern, newest state-of-the-art facilities that made our AstraZeneca vaccine. And now, of course, we're getting a shipment of 1.2 million doses from the United States. So wherever it was produced in Europe, maybe Switzerland, I'm not quite sure exactly where, that's not the batch we received.
Okay.
So I don't have any issues.
Okay. On Sunday, I was talking to Peel Public Health, and they asked in Saga to put out a plea to get 80 plus
Yes,
vaccinated.
there,
Right? I mean,
there is
are
a
we
lot of
having issues
hesitancy.
getting people vaccinated?
We are. We are having
Okay.
issues. So there's a lot of hesitancy. That's why I suggest to you that people feel safer and more comfortable and more confident going to their doctor's office for it, or to a local pharmacy where they may get their flu vaccine each and every year rather than one of those mass immunization centers. Don't forget, we've also already immunized a great percentage of our population 80 and above, because let's be honest, many of them live in congregate settings, which are long-term care homes or seniors retirement homes. And we have done all those homes. Anyone who wanted the vaccine, it was made available to them already. So now we're just talking about the 80-plus-year-olds that live independently.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've always wondered. I know Hazel McCallion, former mayor of Mississauga, took the jab, right? Did that bring up a spike of people coming out that are over 80? Did that work?
I wish I could say yes, but we didn't actually see the absolute numbers, right? No, no. And she received the Pfizer
Okay.
because she went early days before we had the mass immunization centers. I call them max vax, the mass vax centers open. So
Yeah.
she went to the Trillium Health Partners site. She went to Credit Valley Hospital because at the time, remember, only the hospitals could store the Pfizer vaccine because they're the only ones that had the deep freezer, and that's where she got it. She got it early days. But I just asked her to come and tell her story at my press conference on how safe it was and how good she felt. And she did a great job, I thought, saying, hey, I did it, no problem. It was wonderful. I feel great. There were no side effects. And yeah, I thought she was brilliant. She was perfect.
Yeah, no, it was on every news publication too.
I
So,
know. It
so
was wonderful.
it
She was
worked.
everywhere that day. I thought it was great.
That's
I was
awesome.
very
Uh,
pleased, yeah, to have her.
so, news broke about the school boards asking Peel Public Health and the ministry to suspend in-person learning. We've heard from a lot of teachers, educators, that that conditions are really poor in regards to working, and it's they think it's unsafe. Um, what do you think of this? And do you think that schools will go into remote learning?
So, a couple of things about that. First of all, I've had this conversation with Dr. Lowe, and he feels very strongly that kids should stay in school and with the right protocols in place. And he feels that it is safe in the schools. And I believe the school boards issued some new guidelines. It included wearing of face shields or goggles, and to not to sip their water or have their lunch in congregate settings, but to do it individually, independently, and all that. So some new guidelines came out. I think he'd like to keep schools open as long as possible, as long as it's safe to do so. Yeah.
So,
That said, I think I was interviewed on one of the networks, and I said, well, I'm concerned about the educators, our teachers, and
yeah,
maybe they should be moved up the list a little bit, because of course they're dealing with our children, which can be little petri dishes. They may not be infected, but they may be carrying. So, I feel for the teachers, the frontline workers as well. And so I thought, well, if we're opening it up in phase 2 to anyone who can't work from home but has to go into schools, they should be given consideration for being put higher on the list, I think.
true. So no remote learning then anytime soon. It'll still be in class.
These things are monitored closely, and I can't say that because things turn on a dime. And if we have 10 schools closed down, then I think they would reevaluate that, right? But right now, it's still very manageable, and Dr. Lowe feels all the safety protocols, procedures are in place, that it's safe for children and for the educators, the teachers, and the staff, of course, the administration, the janitors, etc., to be in schools. But once he feels that changes, that could change. So can I say we will be open until March break, which is April break? I am very hopeful. You know, maybe what would happen is, maybe if there was an outbreak or the case numbers are high at the time, maybe they'll have an extra week. You never know, right? We really do monitor this in 7 to 14 day rolling periods, rather than make a split second decision, and nothing is certain, right?
Okay.
Nothing is certain. But right now, the goal is to keep schools open. Should there be a big outbreak and case numbers soar, and of course, I already told you the hospital's at 101% capacity, then things could change. And rightly so, they should, if the situation evolves and it's dangerous for children and teachers to be in class.
Tomorrow is the Ontario provincial budget. What would you like to see, or what would you like to see Mississauga in the budget for?
So we have made, as we do every year, pre-budget submissions, and this year we had a list of, I believe, 14 items that went to the province. And, you know, largely we want to be sure that the Safe Restart program is continued, because, of course, the effects of the pandemic didn't end at the end of 2020. They continue on, and in fact, here we are in almost the third wave, depending on if you consider this entering the third wave or not. So, you know, we're acutely feeling all the effects with respect to deferring property tax from anyone who needs it deferred. All the same incentives we put in place are in place. The biggest hit we continue to take, not only with our recreation cultural facilities being shut down, but transit use. You know, we're still running twice as many buses to carry half as many people, and we're really running at about 40% capacity. So huge hit. So we will need Safe Restart funding. We will need a top up for our transit deficits. And that'll be huge for us. So there's that, and there are, of course, the infrastructure projects. We've asked for the marina and port credit, and the transit terminal in the downtown, and, you know, additional funding. There's also a formula, we call it the PILT, the payment in lieu of taxes, that the airport pays us, and it's based on a tax per head, per passenger. And, you know, they are down so significantly, which means we're down, and we're okay with suffering when they suffer. But the problem is there's a 5% capacity, 5% increase that's allowed each year only. So we have a ceiling at 5%. So meaning that if we're only operating at 10% capacity and taking revenue for, let's call it 5,000 people a day, that number next year can only increase by 5%. So we're actually about 30 to 35 years before we're earning the same revenue we did last year. It's a very serious dent in our revenue stream. Yeah. Very serious dent. But it's difficult to explain publicly, and they know what we're talking about, and we know, and of course the airport knows as well. So, but the change in the PILT formula is critical to Mississauga, and it hasn't changed since SARS. That's when it started, and there was always the 5% cap, and they don't even include the levy on cargo, which really has an impact on our roads too, with all the cargo coming in up at the airport. So that's huge for us, the changing that formula. And it's a simple regulatory change that can be made, would make a big difference. So restart funding, infrastructure funding, the PILTs, etc. These are typically the kinds of things that go into the budget.
Inside baseball stuff that nobody knows about except for you. So
right. Hopefully I explained that.
You did. I understood it. So let's talk about Amazon. I know it's in Brampton, but I have to talk about it because it affects Peel.
Of course.
Does Peel Public Health, you know, I know there was 240 cases within the 2 weeks prior to it closing. Does Peel Public Health actually monitor whether or not these people actually quarantine at home for 14 days? Or is it on the honor system?
That's a very good question. The answer is yes. I guess they have a phone tree, I suppose, probably the same way they're doing contact tracing, because they probably have to speak to each of those individuals to track down the people they may have come in contact with. And I think the total number at Amazon grew, right? When you take it from the beginning of the pandemic to today, they've had significant outbreaks there. Notwithstanding, I've discussed it with them, they have a lot of safety procedures and protocols in place there. They were trying to take all steps, all measures to protect their employees and their workers. What I liked hearing is they sent them home with full wages. Whatever they were expecting to receive, they were going to receive. So they were going to get sick pay, sick leave to stay home and recover. And I was very pleased to hear that, very delighted to hear that the province didn't mandate it. And here's a company that stepped up and did it anyways. So yeah, of course, the public health will be checking up on them.
Okay. These are questions from, we only have 4 minutes left, so I'll get through them really quickly. From Instagram viewers, what is the vaccination plan for refugees living in Mississauga?
Yeah, there is no exception to the rules. You just call and make your appointment. Nobody asks your immigration status, or I think they do ask your postal code. If you call the Trillium Health Partners or Peel Public Health, they'll probably ask for your postal code, but I believe we don't turn people down. And I know that to be true because I know people in Peel and people in Halton have called pharmacies in Toronto that were, 60 plus that wanted the AstraZeneca vaccine, and no one was questioned. We don't question people. You want the vaccine, you will get the vaccine if you qualify. If it's your age cohort.
Okay. Modified gray zone for gyms. Is that a possibility?
I know. Believe me, I want that. I want that. I've been talking to Drew over at Port Credit F45 regularly. He was texting me today, Bonnie, what do you think? What do you think? And I said, Drew, I just don't know. I had expected that announcement last week and it didn't come. And now all I always see is case numbers increasing, they're not stable, they're not steadying. There's still 25% increase every week, and that's scary. So the answer is I don't know. I wish they would. I'd love it myself. I would go over and work out in the parking lot or in the park or wherever Drew wants to hold training classes. So we've done it before. We did it in the cold weather. It was, what was it, October, November, when it really started to get cold before
I remember your story.
It was cold, but we were doing it. It was fine. You get warmed up after a few minutes. So I know we've got a whole group. We've got a big chat group with all our F45 colleagues over in Port Credit. And we're all just, and I hear about it. They text me. They say, so Bonnie, are we opening or not? And I'm like, fingers crossed. I want to too. Yeah, so I hope so. I hope so. I really sincerely hope we do.
Has the mask wearing inside bylaw been extended? Yeah.
It wasn't lifted. So the answer is
it wasn't lifted? Okay.
No,
okay.
It was never lifted. That is still a requirement everywhere. It's still a requirement. You must wear a mask if you're indoors. That's correct.
Okay. Can we create a drive-through vaccination center in Mississauga?
Yes. So the answer is yes. So, we were inhibited by the amount of supply we had been receiving. And, I was a little upset about the fact that we received under the provincial average, and that did get fixed. And we did get a lot of vaccine in to put us at about the provincial average. But you would think a hot zone would get more than the average. Anyways, that's last week's battle. So the plans are mobile test sites, mobile units, come up to the congregate settings to vaccinate, drive-through, lots of plans to do all those kinds of things. I've got to be honest, we didn't have the demand and we didn't have the supply. But certainly in today's announcement, I know the Premier put 3.7 million aside for access for elderly and handicapped people to be vaccinated. So, that might go to help us get a mobile unit up and running to vaccinate.
So I think
people.
So I think this question is more asking like kind of a McDonald's drive-through, and then you get the jab and you leave. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, we had those 4 testing sites. I don't see why not, right?
Okay. All right. That's
be honest. I don't know that we've even had the demand to do something like that just yet.
Okay.
Because we have these, sites set up, 5 sites set up, and you've seen the photographs. they're ready to go, and they've been waiting for supply, but there wasn't a lot of uptake. There was a lot of hesitancy. We need to get the message out. The best vaccine is the next vaccine, and you need to protect your family and yourself and go and get vaccinated. I mean, this
True.
is required. You know, we just don't know what will happen in the future. What if you want to take travel and they ask you if you'd been vaccinated or not, or if you go into a restaurant, maybe you'll be seated if you've been vaccinated. Like, this is important, folks. This is our future. This is, you know, we don't question, well, I guess some people do, you know, the children, they get measles, mumps, rubella, etc. before going to school, whooping cough. This is important. This is in that league of importance that we get vaccinated so that life can return to normal. So please, when your age group is called, or your work cohort, your essential worker, please go and get vaccinated. Is your civic responsibility. It's your civic duty to go out and get vaccinated, please.
Perfect. My alarm just went off. I know you're busy. That told me 30 minutes is up. So thank you very much, Mayor Crombie. I'll see you next week.